Welcome, everyone. This is going to be a fairly short introduction into Hindenburg Pro. And just to set it up, Hindenburg Pro is a DAW, which is an audio editor. And it's specifically designed for radio journalists and audio storytelling. So if you're doing anything like features, documentaries, radio segments, that kind of thing, obviously also podcasts, this is a tool that is designed specifically for you. You could obviously argue that any audio editing tool is designed for audio production, and you would be right. But the difference is that all the other tools that are out there, which are great tools, by the way, they are actually designed for music production. And music production and radio production are two very different beasts. We think of things in different ways. So this, I am the founder of the company, and my basic idea with creating Hindenburg Pro was to make something that was very bespoke for radio, because no one else had done it, and I thought it was about time. Anyway, so these are some of the things that we're going to be running through. Yeah, here we go. I'm just going to show you what the end product will be, and then we'll just basically go through how you add some audio, how you do a recording, what regions and selections are, how you do volume automations. We're going to get into transcription, which is a thing. Clipboards, that is really how you organize your material. Effects is always something that's like how do you add equalization, compression, that kind of thing. And obviously, when it comes to exporting, how do you export at broadcast levels? Now, going back to what I said before, it's bespoke for radio production. So really, that means that we know what you are going to do probably way ahead of you know it yourself, maybe even decades before you know it yourself, because we know what broadcast standards are. We know what would be required from a radio station, so we can actually build that into the system. So let's have a look at what the end products would actually look like. This could be a session. Now, this might look daunting at first, but trust me, as we go through these things, all the things that have been done here, you can probably learn within half an hour. And this is, well, let's just have a listen to it. Let's see what it sounds like.
Teddy Sadaka has been in the clothing business since he was a teenager in the 1970s, back when his parents started Apparel Production Incorporated, this factory on 39th Street. And Sadaka says blood, sweat, and tears have gone into it. Literally.
I have this scar on my finger right here, right? You see the scar there?
He points to a thin white line on his right hand.
That's the needle that went into my finger.
When he was 15, Sadaka was sewing a button on some fabric, and he stuck his finger with a long needle.
Cursed my brains out, but put a Band-Aid on it and go back to putting buttons on.
Now, he owns the factory. Sadaka greets.
So this is a fairly typical segment. You probably actually call it like an A-B segment, where you have narration and you have interviews, more narration, more interviews, and stuff like that. So let's see how we actually go about it. Let's just go back to the presentation for a sec. Let's start off by adding some audio. Now, the easiest way to add audio, let's just see if we can open a session here. Adding audio, just wanted to pull a nice blank session. The easiest way to add audio, first and foremost, there's many ways of doing it, is basically just to take some audio, drag it in, and there you have it. You want take some music, take that in, drag it in, it will automatically convert it. Now, if you were paying attention, you would see that the levels were automatically being set as I dragged in some music. Let's just try that again. Let's try this one. I pay attention to the waves. That's already been set, so that's cheating. Try another one. There you go. It moved it slightly. And I'm not doing anything right now. And the whole point of this auto leveling is that, well, it will be an advantage when it comes to exporting, but that's not really the point. When we are doing an audio mix, one of the things that we spend an enormous amount of time is setting correct levels. And the way that Hindenburg works is it sets the correct broadcast levels. So if we start out here with a piece of narration.
Easy sounds together since they were kids in the city of Utrecht.
We can see down here at the bottom of the meter that we have a QPPM meter. You can change that to different meters, but right now it's just a QPPM meter, which is the meter that you will typically find in different radio stations. And again, if we just go back to finding some narration, what we want the narration to do is we want to have it peak around -9, maximum of -9 on the QPPM meter.
That's Simone Ackermans, the Simone of Simone and Kipski.
And if you look at the meter down here, it's exactly peaking at -9 on the QPPM meter. So that really means that you can take this piece of audio that you just imported, deliver it to the radio station. They can pull it into their playout system and everyone will be happy, especially the sound engineer or the station manager. When it comes to music, it's much the same story. We want the music to be balanced and we want it to not be too loud. So the whole point of loudness is, I'm really hoping that you can hear this. I'm not getting any feedback. But anyway, the whole point of loudness is that everything is perceived as equally loud. And one of the tricky things about doing audio is how do you get things to be at the correct level? So you don't have levels that are jumping up and down and what have you. So if we take these 3 different pieces of, well, actually 4 pieces of, no, that was the same one. That's just again cheating. So we've got some different music. We can find some more music if we like something like, I had something slightly more interesting at some point. Let's do that one. So if we didn't set it our levels and then we just jumped from one piece of music to the next, to the next, to the next, if you hadn't done anything, then the levels will be all over the place. Let's try to do the same thing here.
We making our whole joint short circuit. Head high, touch the sky, get 'em up. Get 'em up, 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 get 'em up.
So there was no jumping levels, but as you can see just on the waveforms, I hope you can see that these are waveforms. I'm not going to go too much into detail. The waveform levels are set very differently. These ones are way higher than the ones over here and the ones over here. And it's because this is compressed music and this music here has a larger dynamic range. And this is the genius behind loudness measurements is it takes into consideration that something that is dynamic, we have to turn that up for it to be perceived as equally loud as something that's compressed. Now, all that is very interesting, but you don't really need to worry about it whilst you're working with Hindenburg. You just drag something in, the levels are set, and you're ready to start moving things around. Recording. Obviously, at some point, you would like to do some recording. Let's just set up a new session like this. It's pretty straightforward. You want to record either to just a single track or to many tracks. If it's just you tracking your voice, that'll just be a single track. If you are tracking yourself and your interviewee, that could be multi-tracks. You could even have a roundtable conversation, having 4 or 5 or as many as you'd like, really, tracks recording at the same time. Now, because you can have more than one track, you have to tell the system what track is it that you're going to be recording on. So that's what we call arming a track. I have no idea why it's called arming a track. That's just the way it is. So you press this little button out here, and now the system knows that something is going to be recorded, and it's going to be recorded to this track. If we wanted to record to more than one track, we could do that as well. See, then we just choose a different input. Let's just choose that one. And oh, that's probably going to go terribly wrong. Nope, it didn't. So now I have two different inputs. I'm recording from my microphone and I'm recording from my telephone, apparently. And if I wanted to, I could just go down here, click this button that says record. Obviously, there's a shortcut for it, which is Control and spacebar. Did I actually get it going? Yes. So here we go. So now we're recording to either a single track, multiple tracks, or whatever you want. And as soon as you stop recording, see what happens to the levels again? They are automatically set. So this is just such a time saver. I'm going to regret I set my telephone to do that at some point. Regions and selections. Regions are where we have the audio. Let me just find another setting. Selection here. There we go. A session. So all these blocks of audio, they are actually called regions. And a region is only a representation of the actual audio. So if I trim a region like that, I could do that, but I'm not actually touching any of the audio. I can always just drag it out again and everything is fine. I can move the region around. I can just grab here at the top, move the region around anywhere I want. That's pretty straightforward, I hope. And as I was saying, you can trim them. There are many more things that you can do, but we'll just keep it to the basics right now. So really, all you need to do for setting something up like this is just drag in some audio, move them into place, and you'll be happy. But at some point, you'll probably want to edit something out. So let's just move this out of the way for a second and go back to how we actually make a selection. So it's selected when you just click on it and you can move it around. That's one way of making a selection. We don't have multiple different selection tools. That's just to keep it simple. You might have found that in different systems where you have like all kinds of different tools, one for moving, one for selecting. We don't do that. Here, if you pay attention to the cursor, you can see right now it's an arrow. That means that I can move the region. If I move my cursor down, it will switch to a I-beam. And as soon as it's an I-beam, I can just drag a selection like so. Now, anything that I want to do, for instance, just making a cut or something like that, will now only happen within that selection. And this obviously goes for cut, copy, paste, anything you really can think of doing. That's done with selections. You can do the same thing. You can also, if you wanted to, just select the entire thing and say you wanted to cut that. Then that will just cut the entire region. So that's one way of selecting. Select the region, and the other one is make a selection. Again, obviously, there are more ways of doing it. So you could use shortcuts to set in and out markers if that's what you wanted to do. You can also use scrub.
They were kids.
If you're like more old-fashioned about it. If you're coming from tape.
Kids in the city of.
Go like that and cut that out. So yes, that's really it. That's regions. So there's not much more to say about that. Automations. Now, typically you would like to automate your levels. So despite the one I just said about you could, we have what's it called? Auto levels. That's not the same as automations. So all the levels are now being set automatically here within these regions. But if I play it back, the music down here will still be too loud when we come to the actual voices and to the interviews. We just try it out.
Simone and Kipski have been creating crazy sounds together since they were kids in the city of Utrecht.
We used to go skateboarding, and then when we got tired, we'd just spend hours pressing pause buttons.
It's not horrible, but it's still too loud. So how would we go about actually lowering the level? So if we just highlight this region down here, we can see that we have this volume line all the way over the top. If we grab that, we can lower the level, which is fine, but it's not necessarily what we wanted to do. We can also grab this little dot at the beginning and fade in. Okay, fair enough. So now it's fading in and we want to lower the level. It's not bad, but it's still not necessarily what we want to do, because what we want to do is we want the music to start up here and then go down and lower itself underneath the regions. So that would be a, well, let's start with one interesting one. Let's just say that we have this little piece of narration here, and we want the music to duck down underneath it. In other systems, you set these waypoints on the line and you drag them down, and that works to an extent. But we are doing radio, we're busy people, we don't have time to set 4 different waypoints to make something as simple as a duck. So the way we do it is you make a selection, as I showed you before, and drag with inside the selection, like so, and all the dots are set for you.
Simone and Kipski have been creating crazy sounds together since they were kids in the city of Utrecht.
And everything can be set in real time, so you don't have to stop as you're working. You can just adjust as you go. And we could do the same with this one. Comes in, just drag this down a bit.
We used to go skateboarding, and then when we got tired, we'd just spend hours pressing pause buttons on cassette decks and trying to make samples, sort of.
So that is one way of doing that. Another way would be, and I've actually forgot to find some sound for that, so I'm just going to go hunting for some in my sound library. Let's go here. Not an airplane. Church bells, yes. For some reason, church bells are beginning of many radio segments. So let's say we wanted these church bells
Simone
to come in, chime a couple of times, and then we want them to go down. We could do the same thing, just make a selection, drag it down, and we made a duck. But there's another thing that we do very often when we're doing radio, which is doing a sound bed. And a sound bed is that you want the sound to start up, and then you want it to go down as before, but then you want it to stay down. It's a subtle difference. So the way to do that is you make a selection, as we did before, but this time we're not going to drag inside. We're going to drag outside the selection, like so.
Simone and
Yeah, let's just move that into place.
Simone and Kipski have been creating crazy sounds together since they were kids in the city of Utrecht.
We used to go skateboarding, and then when we got tired, we'd just...
And if we wanted to, we could do the exact same at the other end, make a short selection, drag it up again, and there you have it.
make samples, sort of.
And honestly, if you are able to do a fade in, like so, a duck, like we just did before, and a sound bed, like so, that is all you need to know to be able to do something like the one that we saw at the beginning. Everything that's done here is done with these methods. And I do mean everything. It's it'll hopefully only take you about an hour to get it under your fingers. It's really easy to do. And then you can basically create everything. And everything that you're seeing here, again, is just throwing in some audio, doing a bit of editing, setting some levels, like we've got it down here.
Structure is aggressive.
The real bottom line is they're looking to take our real estate put it into Office.
And that's it. That's all there is to it. Well, a bit of training maybe. But the good thing is it's really easy to get started with, and you can play around with it. We can do more though. Transcription. Transcription is a really, really cool way of easily getting to the core of your story. If you just want to edit out large chunks or mistakes or that kind of thing, just doing it through the transcription is fine. But if you're actually editing your actual radio piece, I would not recommend it. But anyway, I'm just going to show you how it works. So let's say we've taken a piece of audio, we've added it into the system. Now we can go highlight it, go up to our tools and choose transcribe. And then if we started it now, I'm not going to be bothered doing that. It will obviously take a little bit of time. Then it will just run through it and transcribe it. If it's just a single track, it will just take the transcription of the single person talking on the track. If you've done an interview with more than one, if you've done an interview, obviously you're more than one, with yourself and someone else, you can use multiple speakers and it will automatically detect you and that other person. So for now, we're just going to, let's see, I'm just cheated. So I've already made a transcription. So now we can see it here in the region. That is not that helpful, albeit it looks cool. So in view, we can open our manuscript.
His parents started Apparel Production Incorporated, this factory, on 39th Street. And Sadaka says blood, sweat, and tears have gone into it. Literally.
Okay, so transcriptions are not 100% correct. Sometimes what happens is you'll get a word that's wrong. Let's say, for instance, this wasn't apparel, but apple. The way to correct it is you just click enter on it, say apple, and click enter again, and you're done. That is really
Apparel Production Incorporated, this factory, on 39th Street. He points to a thin white line on his right hand. He points to a thin...
Clearly here we have a double take, so what we could do is just highlight the text here and cut that out.
He points to a thin white line on his right hand. When he was 15, Sadaka was sewing a button on some fabric, and he stuck his finger with a long needle. When he was 15, Sadaka was... When he was 15, Sadaka was sewing a button on... When he was 15...
She really takes that one a few times, doesn't she?
He was 15.
Let's not do that.
He was 15.
And actually, because we have the audio up here, I didn't do this on purpose. If I drag the end of this trimming end, I will actually go back to the audio. So I can always just trim it here in the actual audio.
When he was 15, Sadaka was sewing a button on some fabric, and he stuck his finger with a long needle.
So the combination of having the audio right there where you actually need it and having the transcription is that is just saves you so much time. It's really nice. I must say I use it a lot, especially when doing video, but we're going to skip that. Unless someone shouts, "You what?" If you have any questions, just jump in. Otherwise, I'm just going to fly on to the clipboards. Clipboards. There we go. And favorites for that matter. So the whole point of the clipboard is to have a place where you can store your audio. If you've been working with other audio editors, a typical way of working is that you have some audio, like an interview.
And one more thing, could you, in a full sentence, say your full name and what you do here?
I'm Karen Sadaka, and I'm Teddy's partner in the company.
So what you would do is select that. You'll probably do something like split it, and then you'll add that to a different track. So you can use that later.
I think too. So,
So
yeah.
as I was saying that the inconvenience of going to Brooklyn, not only the inconvenience, the design.
And then say, okay, that one there, I'm going to take that and pull that onto a different track. Now, that's fine. You can work that way. But the problem often is if you're working with larger sessions where you have multiple tracks and multiple interviews, you will get lost very, very quickly. And this is where the clipboard comes in. It lives up there in the view. Typically, you have it here to your right. So what we could do instead of doing this was we could take this clip and then just drag that into a group over here. Here we could rename it. Let's see, what did you say?
I'm Karen Sadaka.
And whatever he said.
Yeah.
As I was saying that the inconvenience of going to Brooklyn.
Take that one, just add that over there as well. Actually, we can give him his own group. Whatever that is. And this one here, that was Karen. And this one here, that was, as far as I remember, Teddy. And it's just a great way of organizing your material. Actually, another way of organizing your material would be to add colors. So if we wanted Karen to have a specific color, we could open this little panel down here, which is show hide colors, and then we could just give her her own color. The clipboard over here is, again, it's a place for organizing your material. And what you can do is, if you deleted everything in your workspace, it's all non-destructive, so don't worry about it. You could always go over here, find that clip, and drag that out. Give that color again. Drag this one out. There you go. And because it's non-destructive, you can always go back to the full interview if you wanted to. So that's clipboards. And they follow the session. So all the clips that you have in a session, they'll be right there. But sometimes there are clips that you would like to use throughout all your sessions, like jingles, breakers, that kind of thing. And then we call favorites. So you have a favorite bin. And here you can have, you know, whatever you like, all kinds of different sounds lying around that you use all the time.
Back up to that first step.
The things that I use all the time, apparently. But anyway, they're in my favorites. And if I start a new session, you'll see that everything will be cleared from the workspace and also from the clipboards, like so. But everything in my favorites, they're still there. Oh, we're getting through this in amazing speed. Effects and sounds. And I just added the sounds thing because I forgot it before. Let's go back to regions and selections. Okay, so let's imagine for a second that we've started setting up a radio piece. It looks something like this, and we're happy with that. But we would like to add some ambience to it, or we don't have any lying around. Well, you do, as it turns out, because you can go up here again to view, open sounds, and then here we have this little clipboard looking thing that's called sounds. And let's say we wanted to, I don't know, find some seaside or something like that. There we go. And we've actually, we're working together with a Norwegian sound company that's called Soundy that has provided all these sounds for us. So, and they're all there in your system as well. So here we go. We've added some C to that. Let's give that one a C-ish color.
Simone and Kipski have been creating crazy sounds together since they were kids in the city of Utrecht.
We used to go skateboarding, and then when we got tired, we'd just spend hours.
Simone and Kipski have been creating crazy sounds together since Simone and Kipski have been creating crazy sounds together since they were kids in the city of Utrecht.
We used to go skateboarding, and then when we got tired,
Then what we could do is, let's say, here we want C to come
sort
up a
of,
bit.
and trying to make samples, sort of.
Here we can do a reverse duck, like so.
Samples, sort of.
Just move this back into place.
Sort of.
That's Simone Ackermans, the Simone of Simone.
And just tweak things slightly. So you can see whatever we think of doing, we can actually do that fairly easily, just with like these, what, 3, 4 different tools that you need to use.
Sort of.
That's Simone Ackermans, the Simone of Simone and Kipski.
I think there's a pretty big sense.
And actually adding effects, this was like sound effects, but we could actually add effects as well. And the typical effect to add would be, if we have a listen to this piece of audio here.
We used to go skateboarding, and then when we got tired, we'd just spend hours pressing pause
You
button.
might not be able to hear it that clearly, but there is a low frequency hum, and there's a bit of a hiss as well. So what we can do is go in here and say add noise reduction. And the way that the noise reduction works is it's really fairly simple. You just play back some audio.
We used to go skateboarding, and then when we got tired, we'd just spend
And we can see that it's analyzing the audio now.
hours pressing pause buttons on cassette decks and trying to make samples, sort of.
And now it's found the noise, and all we really need to do is just, do you want to apply more or less of it? And for that, obviously, just use your ears. But the hum's gone. The buzz is gone.
We used to go skateboarding, and then when we got tired, we'd just spend hours pressing.
And other things that you will probably already been playing around with is stuff like equalizers. Again, we try to keep it simple, but they sound really good. Same with the compressor. Compressor is always nice to have, especially on your vocals. Just add more or less compression. So keeping it simple is what we try to do, but at the same time, making it sound really, really good. There's a lot of producers out there that swear to our compressor, and they have no idea how it works. Neither do I, to be honest. I leave that to the geniuses who actually do the coding. I just tell them I want a compressor and I want it to have one knob, and they look at me and go, what the hell are you on about? Anyhow, we also have another tool that you might find interesting at the radio station, which is something we call a voice profiler. And the voice profiler lives down here. So you can apply, for instance, a generic voice profile. And the voice profile is really just an EQ. But it's an EQ based on a huge amount of different radio sounding voices. And as you can see, the blue line here is in a typical EQ line. But what it's doing is comparing the current audio to what you would expect on air. And then it's creating an EQ to make it sound slightly more brilliant and give it a little bit more oomph at the bottom. You can also actually create your own profiles. You can learn from a piece of audio, and then you can apply your own profile. So you can learn from something that's already been on air and you're happy with that sound. And then you can just go in and apply that to the voice. So if this one here was Clark, so we could just apply his profile, and then it will automatically create a profile for Clark. And the great thing about that is it's not a fixed EQ. It's a dynamic. It compares to your optimal sounding voice, and then it tries to create a new ideal EQ every time. That means if your voice changes slightly or you're using a different microphone, it will try its best to make you sound the way that you actually want to sound. So especially for radio stations, that is a huge time saver, so you don't have to have someone at the sound desk setting the EQ every single time. Export and loudness. I swear this is going to be the last one. So now we have created our segment. It looks something like this. And when you want to export it, we can export this, and we can obviously choose different file formats like WAV, MP3, MP2, if you're coming from that kind of older systems, and all the way up to Opus, which no one uses, but it's a shame because it's absolutely amazing. So you can just obviously just export as a regular file. One thing that we can also do is we can go in and we can make specific output levels. Now, is it choosing that? Let's just, there we go. Now it looks more normal. So we can do different settings. Most of it is not interesting. The one that is interesting is the loudness normalization. And the reason why this is interesting right now is that if you are producing something for a radio station, the broadcast standard for delivering in the States to any broadcast station is -24 LUFS. So you can choose that here on your export. If you were doing this as a podcast, on the other hand, you would want to export it at -16 LUFS. So you have the option to actually choose between the different ones. So this is what loudness normalization is. And you just export it, and it exports like at 50 times the speed. Again, you don't want to export in real time. We're radio people, we're busy, we can't sit around all day waiting for an export. There's also another way of exporting, which we call publish. And the idea with publish is that you can have multiple export destinations. Again, let's take the example with a radio station. You want to upload to your local radio station. So here you can set up a specific, I don't know, it could be an FTP up to your radio station, and they want, again, to have that at -24 UFS in a WAV format. But you also have a podcast and you want to use the same segment. So you could set up your podcast host directly in here and say, we want to export that at -16. You only set these things up once. So once you're finished with your segments, you could just choose, I want it to go to these different destinations, click on publish. We'll now create two different files because one was WAV and the other one was MP3. It will set the levels and it will upload them to whatever destination it is that you want to have them uploaded to. So here you have it. You should be able to win that competition by the end of the weekend. Any questions?
Hi, thank you so much for your presentation. That was amazing. Very, very
Oh, great.
interesting. So my question is not necessarily related to the program, but more so, how did you think to create this? How did you think that, oh, like I want to found this, like I want to create this program that people at radio stations and other places can kind of use? How did that idea come about?
It came about as I was sitting in a very small chalet in a little town in the midst of Zambia called Iteshi. And I was building a radio station, a community radio station, because someone asked me to, and I said, sure, sounds fun. And I was looking for software that could be used by the locals. And I loved hanging around, especially with the elders in Zambia, because they were amazing storytellers. And everyone had a story. They could go on for hours and hours and hours telling stories. But as I was building this radio station, I knew that I wanted to be built not for music production, but for talk radio production. I was looking at software like Audacity and other pieces of software, and looking at this through the eyes of a radio producer that doesn't necessarily have a radio background, who doesn't necessarily have a computer background. I was thinking, how do we make something? How do I wasn't at the point actually looking to create a company, but my beef was, where do I find a piece of simple software that is easy to use, but at the same time upholds broadcast standards? And there was nothing. There was absolutely nothing out there. And I was really surprised because I have a radio broadcast background myself, but I'm a sound engineer. I knew how to set all these levels. So I really never thought about it like that before. And then a friend of mine, who's now my partner and co-founder in the company, he's a brilliant developer. We were talking about this one evening as the power went out and we were sitting on my porch. It sounds fancy, but it really wasn't. But we were sitting there and the power went out. And we were talking about this. And I turned to him and said, wait a minute, you do something with software, don't you? Because we didn't really know each other through professional ways and we were playing in a band together. And he said, yeah, I know a bit about software. And I'm stupid. And I said, well, how difficult is this software development malarkey? And kind of one thing led to another. And we thought, okay, let's do it. Let's try it out. And as we started developing, the whole idea was actually just to give it away for free to radio stations in developing countries. That's my brilliant business plan. Give it away for free. As it turns out, not so brilliant. But as we started developing, I needed someone to test it out on. And again, my background was broadcast radio. So I started giving that to some of my colleagues, and they tried it out. And we never heard back from them. It was absolutely dead silence. Heard nothing. And even gave it to some people I knew in America, like Jeff Townend, if you've ever heard of him. He works for Transom. Heard nothing. And so I thought after a few months, I better call them. So I called them, saying, I'm so sorry to disturb you. I know you're very busy people and you've probably not had time to try this out, but have you had time to try it out? And the response was, yes, but it's a bit buggy. Now, this is 10 years ago, it's actually 15 years ago. And yes, it was a bit buggy. And he says, sure, it's a bit buggy. We haven't released it yet. We haven't actually done anything. It's an alpha version. And they said, yeah, but could you get it to be slightly less buggy because we're now using it every single day? And Clayton and I, who is the other guy that I started this with, we just had to sit down and go, you're doing what? You're not supposed to use it. And then we kind of took it from there, and we found that broadcast radio journalists were having the exact same problems that I was actually thinking that you only had in developing countries. So what we did then was, together with broadcast radio people, we tweaked it, not for, again, it's not for music production. So we were talking all the time with journalists and sound engineers. And the sound engineers always went, well, we want to have this and this and this feature in there. And I kept saying, no, you're not going to get that because the journalists won't understand it. We have to meet each other somewhere. The journalists need to know how to use it and what's it for. But on the other hand, we will make sure that you, the engineers, are going to be really, really happy with it. And that's how we ended up with this, this thing that you see in front of you.
I had a question about some of the effect stuff you were showing. Like, so when you showed the noise reduction effect, right? Basically, you just played over it and then that did it. Is that the same for when you were talking about, like, for instance, like EQing and creating EQ profiles?
No, that works just
like
well,
you just turn on the EQ and then you play over the piece, like how, yeah.
No, that just works instantaneously. When you're applying a profile, it will just
do it,
analyze it, and it's done. You don't have to do any more than that. How do you create them?
Yeah.
You find a piece of audio. Let's see. It's really, really simple. Let's go out and say, did you have anything here? So let's say this piece of audio, you have that lying around on one of your hosts, and you know this is the one, sounds great. This is the one you want. So what you do is just go down and say learn profile, and that's it. And then you just save that, give it a name, save it. It's all done. So next time he does a recording, obviously it's not going to be this one, then it's going to be a new recording of some sorts. By the way, the reason it's not recording immediately is because I've got a pre-roll on, but that's a different question. You can do punch-in recordings and that kind of thing. You can do a huge amount of things. Anyway, so now we've got this recording. Then all you would need to do is just go in and find his profile. There you go. Apply profile. All done. You don't even have to look at it, but there is an EQ there.
Does that work on a clip by clip basis or a track by track basis?
Track by track.
Got it. So yeah, you're applying that effect to the whole track.
Yes.
Very cool.
It's just like an EQ. It's just like having a sound engineer listening to it.
Mhm.
And the really brilliant thing about it is that you might say, well, producers that are not necessarily working in studios. They could be recording from home, or if you are doing an EQ at home, it might sound great in your speakers or in your headphones, but that is no way of doing an EQ, because that's not going to sound good anywhere except in your headphones or on your speakers. And this is the reason why we have radio studios. They're not there to look really cool. They're there to have a really dull sound, to be quite honest. They have to have a completely flat sound. So whatever you're producing, there will be sound good in a car, in a kitchen, or in a bathroom, or whatever. It has to sound good everywhere. And headphones don't do the same. So another advantage of this is if you give every producer their own profile, they don't have to worry about, what do I do? Does it sound good now? Does it sound good now? I have no idea. It sounds great in my headphones. All they need to do is just apply their own profile.
Oh, another question.
Sorry, I just had a very quick question. This just came up because you were talking about being in a chalet with no Wi-Fi, and I was just wondering if this can be used without Wi-Fi.
Yes, it can. Yeah, absolutely right. And the whole transcription thing, I'm happy that you mentioned it, actually. The whole transcription is offline. And so, yes, you can sit in the bush somewhere and actually work. But the real reason that I insisted on it had to be offline is that you will be working at some point with sensitive material through interviews. And I'm not going to do the whole, let's all be scared of the internet. But the reality is that every time you upload something to the cloud, you do not really know what's going on. And there was a story out not too long ago where there was an American journalist who had done an interview with someone from, was it Tibet? I think something like that. And had that transcribed. And a few days later, the Chinese government was knocking on his door saying, why did you do this interview?
So what I'm hearing is you're not going to steal our data.
No, that
Thank
is
you very
definitely
much.
not what we're going to do.
Cool.
And neither is anyone else, for that matter.
This was really
You're
fantastic.
very welcome.
I'm very excited about this software. I kept going, wow, that's so good when you were presenting.
Oh, right. Brilliant. Well, I'm happy to hear it, because it's, I must say, another thing is that producing radio is so much fun. And we've taken all the fun out of it for so many years because it's been complicated and we don't necessarily have sound engineers that can help us out. And really what I'm trying to do is, one, give anyone who actually wants to have a voice within audio, they should have it. So here you go. Off you go. Make your stories. But also it should be fun, because it is just so much fun just throwing things around and, playing with it.
Totally.
So I hope you have fun.